A couple of weeks ago, we built the concrete weight plates that you can see on the rack behind me there. And they've been working fantastic. The one thing that we found is we don't have a good way to store them. So today we're solving that problem, and we're gonna build a nice little rack for each side of the squat rack. We're gonna keep this build nice and simple. All we're gonna use are some 2x4s, some screws, and a little bit of paint. Let's get started.
All right, so getting started here, we're cutting all the cross pieces for each of the racks. We're making 2 separate racks that will hold 5 plates each. So we needed a total of 6 of these cross pieces for each of the racks, which is a total of 12 cross pieces. And with these, the most important thing with these is that each of these cross pieces is exactly the same length. If they're not all the same length, that rack isn't going to assemble squarely and it's not going to sit nice on the floor. So we've set up a stop block with our miter saw here. And all we have to do is slide that piece of wood up against the stop block, make that cut, and we've got accurate repeatable cuts, and all of these pieces will be the exact same length. So we just need to go through, cut 12 of these, and then after the 12 of those get cut, we have 4 side pieces that are just a little bit longer. And these side pieces, the measurements on those is going to depend on the thickness of your plates. So all you need to do is you take all of your plates, stack them all up, measure the thickness of each of those individual plates, and then you're going to add up 1.5 inches for each of the 2x4s that's going to be running in between each of those plates. That will give you the total length of the side that you need to cut, and you're just going to make 4 of those, again setting up the stop block just to make sure all 4 of those are equal. After we have all of these pieces cut, now what we need to do is lay out our 4 side pieces, and we're going to be marking where each of those cross pieces is going to go. So this is easiest if you line up all 4 pieces perfectly, hold them in place, and then all you need to do is measure once and you can mark all 4 pieces all at the same time. So I'm just using a square here to make sure that all 4 of those are lined up, and then I'll also use the square to mark out where everything else is going to get laid up. After we've got everything lined up, now we're going to lay out the location of each of those marks using that T-square. So the way we're going to do this is the end of each of the racks starts with a 2x4, and then we're going to alternate 2x4 weight plate, 2x4 weight plate down the full length of that rack. So what I've got here is the first 2x4 is getting marked out. Then the next measurement that I'm going to draw on with a line there is the thickness of my first plate. So in this case, that's the 45 plate. Then I did 35, 25, 10, and 5, working my way from biggest to smallest. Once I finished getting all of those marks all lined up, I took my square and just transferred that line across all 4 of the boards, just to make sure that they were all lined up, all those lines are in the exact same spot. It makes construction really easy because you have everything marked out where it all needs to line up. The last thing to do before we start assembly is pre-drill some holes. That's important just to make sure that none of these start to split as we drive those screws in. While I've got everything laid out on its side here, it makes it really easy to get those holes all drilled. So I'm just using a countersink bit to go through and pre-drill 2 holes where each of the 2x4s is going to get attached together. So go through and just complete that for all 4 boards. Now moving on to the assembly stage. The first way that I did this did not work very well. It was super frustrating, but I figured I'd leave it in for a little bit of your entertainment so you can learn from my mistakes. I took all these 4 boards, lined them up together, and put those cross pieces in. The problem I did the first time is I tried attaching both sides to one of the cross pieces and then working my way down to each subsequent cross piece. The problem here is that fit is very snug. So actually getting those specific cross pieces to line up and get them in the right spot involved lots of hammering and wiggling and just tons of frustration. So don't do it this way. It did not work very well. It still did end up working. It just took 10 times longer than it needed to. So the second way that I'm going to show you here is way better. Don't do what I did and do it this way instead. So to make things a little bit easier on yourself, what you're going to do is you're just going to do all of one side and then all of the other side. This means you don't have any hammering and fiddling to try and kind of get everything lined up in the right spot. So to make my life easy, I just drove all of the screws partway through. None of them are coming out the other side. It just keeps them all lined up and I don't have to hold screws at awkward angles on the side. And once I had those screws in, I lined up all of my cross pieces, attached all the cross pieces on one side, then attached all the cross pieces on the other side. When you do it this way, sometimes there's a little bit of wiggling you need to do just to make sure that that piece is running directly across and it's an equal distance as you go. But this way worked much more effectively than the first way that I tried to do it. All right, and there you have it. Everything is assembled. We've got that rack ready to go. All right, and then just to up the finish on these, make them blend into the floor and kind of hide out of the way a little bit more, just an optional step. I conscripted my wife Ashley to just give these a super quick coat of paint. This is just a semi-gloss standard paint we put on a single coat because we don't need it to be perfect, and this just kind of helps it stand out a little bit less and look nice for that finished product.
All right. Here we are, the paint is dry, everything is finished. These turned out great. I'm gonna set one of these on each side of the rack, load it up with the weight, and we are all finished. So with just a few simple tools, we were able to go from this into this beautifully organized weight room. Everything is stacked up, heavy at the back, light at the front. We've got one full set of weights on each side, and everything is nice and organized and really easy to use. All you have to do is pull this up on one side. Because these fit perfectly on those Olympic size bars, that slots right on and you're ready to work out. Makes things really easy to use. That's a wrap for this project. We'll see you guys in the next one. Into this, into this, into this, into this, into this, into this, into this beautifully organized weight room. Nicely organized weight room.